Hi, welcome to the Buzz on Marketing and Media. My name's Bruce Flanagan, and today we're with Nick Ross from The Word Vietnam. Welcome, Nick.
Hi. Hi, Bruce.
So good to have you on the show today. Thought we'd just have a conversation about your experience in Vietnam and insights into the world you work in. And
Okay.
So tell us a bit about Nick Ross.
I'm from London originally.
Uh-huh.
I left the UK in 1999 and I've been in Vietnam since early 2000.
Wow.
And the publication I work on, or magazine, whatever you call it,
Mm-hmm.
has been going in its present form since January 2008.
Wow.
But we originally published in November 2005 under a different name.
Okay.
Yeah.
Tell us about your education. I mean, won't go all the way back, but you know.
I went to university, place called Bristol. Did a degree in politics and philosophy.
Mm-hmm.
But it was there actually. It's kind of that's where I got involved in journalism. I was on the university paper for 2.5 years,
Uh-huh.
and I was a music editor for 2 years.
Okay.
So that was where I first got into doing something similar to what I do now.
So is that something you chose, or it just happened?
It was something I chose, but they also had a bit of luck. There was a band at the time called Galliano, who were really, really big on the student circuit.
Right.
And the percussionist's mother was
Wow.
very close friends with my mother. And when I first moved out of home, I ended up living with the percussionist's mother.
Okay.
So I wanted to get involved with the music section of the
Uh-huh.
of the university newspaper. So I go along to one of their meetings and I say, well, I think I can get an interview with Crispin Robinson and Galliano. And they said, no, not a chance. I said, no, seriously, let me try. So I explained to them. So I called my mum. My mum called her friend Jennifer. Jennifer called her son Crispin. And yeah, next thing I knew, I had an interview with him.
Right.
And that was basically how I not only got onto the paper,
Right.
but that's also how I ended up getting a job as an editor.
Okay. Wow.
So
Excellent.
So I had a bit of luck. Yeah.
Excellent. So how did growing up in London and then studying in Bristol shape you to sort of who you are today?
I grew up in quite a wealthy area of London, but without the money which other people have.
Okay, that can be challenging.
But at the same time, I was quite privileged. I had a family who cared about making sure that I went to good schools, that I learned stuff after school.
Right.
I think Bristol. I think the way Bristol shaped me was the first time I really was properly away from what I was, from where I was brought up, and I think living there. Because I ended up staying there for 7 years in the end.
Wow.
I think living there kind of made me realise that I wanted to go further afield and wanted to experience the world.
Okay.
So I think that's how Bristol, I guess, shaped me. Really.
Okay. Interesting. And then, so how did you get to Vietnam from Bristol? You said you left 1999.
Yeah.
Was it?
Basically, I was working in publishing.
Right.
Quit. Went travelling with my girlfriend.
Okay.
Arrived here in March 2000 and by chance found work teaching English. So that's it.
Here in Vietnam.
Yeah, here in Saigon.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry, just back up one
Yeah.
step. So after university, what did you do? The first job?
I worked in restaurants and bars.
All right, sure.
My first job I managed to get onto a radio show in Bristol, BBC radio show in Bristol.
Oh, okay, yeah, okay.
And was doing that for about 3 months and then got one of the only 2 times I've ever been fired in my life. I got fired. As happens.
Sure.
And then kind of out of the blue, I managed to, another piece of luck, I managed to get work for a publishing company in London.
Okay.
And it was one morning, I took the day off work, I'm sat in a cafe in the university area, and I see this funny little Bristol University magazine which I'd never seen before.
Right.
So I pick it up, have a look, and in the back of it there's an advert for a publishing company in London who are looking for staff. So I give them a call. And what it turned out was that company, they were in the process of setting up an office in in Bristol, and the woman who was editing that magazine had helped them set up the office. So they'd bought an advert as to say thank you.
Okay.
So I called them up, and I was literally moving to London next week, and I had an interview the day after I moved back to London, and I got a job.
Great.
And then about 2 weeks after I started there, they put an advert in The Guardian for production assistant. They got 200 replies for a £10,000 job. So,
Wow.
so I was very lucky.
Yeah.
Very lucky.
Right. Excellent.
So,
And so then you came to Vietnam, and what did you do when you first got here?
initially, I was living in Saigon. Was doing the teaching rounds, and then got offered a contract working for Petro Vietnam Training College, Manpower Training College in Vung Tau. So that was in August 2000. So I moved to Vung Tau.
Right.
Probably ended up spending, I'd say, about 4 years altogether in Vung Tau.
Right. And is that where you met the love of your life?
Yes,
Okay.
that's where I met her. Yes.
And then what was the beginning? Tell us about the word Vietnam and how that came into existence.
It started with, out of the blue, I got offered a job on a magazine relaunch in Singapore.
Okay.
So a guy I've been friendly with for a few years, he used to work for IDG, and he was a desk editor for IDG.
Okay.
And he got into his 50s, got made redundant. So he was looking for something else. And this opportunity came up. And he said, why don't you come along with me, and you basically go in there and try and work as kind of the managing editor and the designer, and I will actually then be the actual editor of the whole thing.
Right.
So that's how it happened. End up in Singapore. Turns out we've got a publisher who's not really sure what direction he wants the magazine to go in. Get paid my first month wages, and then get paid for a second month. So that was when we started chatting about doing a magazine ourselves, because we both realised we actually worked together quite well.
So you moved to Singapore.
I moved to Singapore,
Right.
yeah.
Okay.
And that's where the idea came from.
What was that magazine that you were working on about?
It was called Education.
Oh, okay.
And we did a relaunch, and the problem was the publisher wasn't sure which angle, how it should be angled. Should it be angled towards students,
Right.
or should it be angled towards institutions, education institutions? So we decided to take it towards institutions with no guidance.
Right.
And then when it comes out, the publisher is angry because he said, well, it should be towards students.
Right.
But it's like, you never gave us any guidance on what we
Right.
should do, and you saw it before we went to print.
Right.
So
Yeah. Interesting. Anyway, learning experience.
Yeah, indeed,
And then
yeah.
so you came back to Vietnam with that guy,
yeah.
right? And
Yeah.
and the story continues.
So we started looking at doing a magazine in Vietnam. He had run a What's On magazine in Saigon in the early 90s, and lost his license. So he was kind of loath to do something in Vietnam. He wanted to do something which was more regional. And then kind of by chance I met someone who said, look, no, you can get a proper license here and be 100% legal. So
Great.
I then convinced the other guy, his name was David, to focus on a magazine on Ho Chi Minh City.
Uh-huh.
And we got a license, and then November 2005 was the first magazine.
Right. So when you started it, were you clear about your objectives, or did that kind of come as you began?
We were clear what we were trying to do. I mean, we modelled it on Time Out.
Right.
And the reason why we did it was because there was just no information at the time about what to do, where to go,
Right.
how to do it.
Yeah.
So the idea was to fill in this big informational gap.
Yeah.
I mean, ironically, that's all done online now. That's all done by simply by Google.
Right.
But at the time, there was nothing.
Right.
So that was where the idea came from.
Was it called The Word when you launched?
No, it was called Saigon Inside Out.
Saigon Inside Out. Okay.
Yeah.
And so how long before it became The Word?
We had 10 issues.
10 issues.
Then we lost our license. I'm not quite sure why. Because we had a third partner, and the license was done through him and his wife.
Right. Okay.
We're not quite sure why, because nothing. It's one of those difficult ones. But we
Sure.
basically we lost our license, but we were allowed to continue, but under a new name.
Okay.
So David, he decided he'd had enough, so he went back to Australia, and so we launched again under a new name, which was Asia Life.
Okay.
That ran 12 issues, and then there was a split, and I basically went off with my wife and was like, we started off the Word.
Okay.
Age Life closed down 6 months and then restarted, I think, in April or May 2008.
Uh-huh.
So that's it. So that's how it happened.
Great. So, even though name may have changed, has the main aim and purpose of the magazine changed over that period of time as well?
In terms of, yeah, it has. I mean, we're much more feature based now.
Right.
We're much, very much so, much more feature based now. I mean, we still have got quite a lot of what's on content, what's happening around town.
Sure.
But certainly it's become much more a feature style magazine, for many reasons. One of them is that basically the online, or the way online is developed is that,
Sure.
is that news and what's happening, what's going on in general is all done online now.
Right.
It's all very
So quick, right?
So quick, yeah. So news has been stolen by the online market.
Yes.
I think the other reason is that's what we're good at, features.
Okay.
That's the kind of thing we're good at. That's what we believe we do well. So,
So is the Word Vietnam aimed at English-speaking readers in general, or is it aimed specifically at expats and tourists?
English speakers who live in Vietnam.
Okay. So would you what kind of percentage would be Vietnamese that read?
19%. We just
19?
literally this morning got survey results back.
Right. Okay.
So
wow.
19%.
Was that a surprise to you?
Last time round, I think it was 24%. So
okay.
I was hoping, and then the time before that was like 10%. So I was hoping it would be higher than that, but still 19% is not bad.
Okay. Good.
And do you want some more figures as well?
Sure. Sure. You got new figures. Let's hear.
34% are European.
34.
32% are North American, and only 7% are Australian.
So is that representative? Is that concurrent with the population from those areas, or is that?
No, I mean we don't know why there are so few Australians reading the magazine. To be honest, it was actually in the survey results we got back as one of the things which are flagged up. Maybe we need to push more towards an Australian market. I don't know.
Okay.
I don't know.
That's interesting that you doing surveys from readers and getting feedback, and how much does that affect your direction?
I'd say we certainly look at the results, and so for example, in terms of leisure activities, the surveys give us some very interesting results on what people do most outside of work, and we look at that as okay, maybe that's something we should focus on more than we are doing already.
Okay.
In terms of general opinions of the magazine, they're usually good, although it's because we cover the whole of Vietnam.
Right.
What happens is that in Ho Chi Minh City, the part they don't like is the Hanoi bit.
Right.
And then the Hanoi, the part they don't like is the Ho Chi Minh City bit.
Right.
But you're talking about 35% on each, as opposed to being more than 50%. So basically it means we understand that, but there's not much we can do about that because we cover the whole of Vietnam.
Okay, sure.
So it depends what it is, really.
So what's the split on Hanoi Ho Chi Minh readership?
It's probably about 2/3 here, 1/3 there.
Okay. Do you think that your magazine is something that responds to what readers want, or are you shaping? Like, are you communicating a message or a consistent voice or something, or is it a bit of a mix of feedback?
I think it's a mix. I think certainly there's been a larger interest in history in the last year or so, and a half, 2 years.
Sure.
And we've seen other publications doing that, online in particular.
Yeah.
And it's made us realise that we should do it ourselves.
Okay.
So that's more us seeing what's going on with the readers. On the other hand, I certainly feel that when people get a lot of pleasure out of seeing an article on them or on their business in the Word, and I certainly know that people do follow us and do read what we talk about.
Right. Okay.
Whether we shape people, I don't know.
Okay. What's been the highlights of creating and building up this magazine over the years you've been here?
Many.
So one or two for us.
I think as an article, probably when we did the cover story on the Quang Chi on the DMZ.
Okay. So what was significant?
Well, you're in the former DMZ, and
Right.
you've got no idea what it's like there.
Yeah.
I mean, going on a mining mission, going to hostels, seeing mine victims in hostel.
Right.
You literally just had it.
Uh-huh.
It's scary.
Yeah.
It's scary.
Yeah.
In terms of other highlights, I mean, I think just every time we do an issue which we're happy with, I think it's just a nice feeling.
Okay. Uh-huh. Cool. And the challenges then? What would be a couple of the significant challenges that you've had?
The challenges is trying to say what we want to say and need to say,
Right.
but not falling foul of the guidelines we have.
Okay, sure. That's always I think that's consistent around the world.
Yeah.
You know. Okay, great. And do you have the end of it's a monthly magazine?
Yeah.
So do you have like the 25th? What day do you go to print?
We're supposed to go to print on the 26th.
Okay. So is it a mad rush at the end of the month? I mean, I've
No
been
matter-
involved in
no matter how much-
magazines and
No matter how much planning you do,
Right.
it's always a mad rush.
yeah, sure.
Doesn't matter how much you do.
What you edit? I'm the ultimate editor of everything that's there.
Yes. So at the moment, I've got my deputy editor is doing all the initial editing, and then I'm all doing all the subbing
Right. Okay.
at the moment. Yeah, but that's a general idea.
So, what about your competitors? How have they shaped you, or how do you see your competitors?
Initially, I've got to get my head around this one actually.
Okay.
Initially, it's been with irritation and frustration,
Uh-huh.
and then something's always clicked with me, where I've realised, oh, actually, it's good that they're there. Ah, okay, that's something which we should do. Oh, actually, having competition is good.
Right.
It's something I've got to get my head around. So I've got to stop the emotional side at the start.
Okay.
But each time we've had some serious competition, we found ourselves raising our game,
Right.
and so competition for us has been the best thing we could ever hope for.
Right. So, do you find you're getting more competition from people that do something similar to you, or the online and how you respond to, say, if online is growing? I think I've noticed there's a few onlines popped up recently. They may not be exactly what you do, but they're there.
Well, yeah, I mean, we're getting. I mean, we've in the last year and a half, we had a mixture of both. We had both a new magazine set up. We've also had a couple more websites come up. Now it seems there's one website there which someone else is copying already.
All right. Yeah.
So
Well, it is Vietnam.
yes, it's Vietnam, but it's foreigners copying foreigners, which is
Okay,
even more interesting.
yeah.
I mean, to me, I see what they're doing. I mean, I've got my positives and negatives about it, but it's good because one website in particular right now is filling in the service which we are physically unable to do.
Okay.
Partly because of our license,
Mm-hmm.
actually mostly because of our license, but also because we're not set up as an entity to be able to do that.
Right. Okay. So, do you? How would you differentiate yourself, or is there something about the word that people will read the word because of that? Something, the culture, the feel, the voice.
I'd say we're quite raw.
Okay.
Voice-wise, I think we're getting more and more edgy than we were. I think before we used to tread a line quite carefully.
Okay.
Now we're getting more edgy.
So raw and edgy is
Yeah.
is we could interpret it a few
Many
ways,
ways, yeah.
but okay, so that's good.
But I mean, we're getting much more edgy than we used to be. So it's still got a long way to go. We finally managed to ask on the Rhino.
On the Rhino?
Yeah, it's one of those things we've been told not to touch, and we finally managed to ask on the Rhino. So
okay.
We've also done. We also find. Did you see the Vietjet Air thing?
Right. Okay. Yeah. Sure.
So we managed to ask on that with all the rudeness of it and all the amusing side of it. And in the past, we'd have been told, no, you can't do that.
Right. Okay.
We've even done ask on basically a comment piece, basically saying, look, stuff's being destroyed here. Fine, it's inevitable, but it needs to be very, very clear what's going to be preserved and what's not going to be preserved, and there needs to be some sort of very, very clear guidelines for it so that people are clear on what's going on. Otherwise, people are just going to uproar all the time.
Sure. So some education and giving people something that can be constructively done.
Yeah.
Excellent.
But we're saying this is what is needed, which before we'd have never have said that.
Right.
We'd have never dared to suggest that something needs to be done.
Right. So you're married to a Vietnamese?
Half Thai, half Vietnamese.
Half Thai, half Vietnamese. Okay, I didn't know that. Does she give you cultural insights, or does that come from staff, or?
She gives me cultural insights every day.
Every day, okay. Well, we won't go there.
World War III.
World War III. Great. So, how would you see your magazine being innovative right at the moment? Especially as the world is changing and people are certainly using their phones and other digital formats to get information. How are you innovating?
So in terms of electronically and digitally, not so much.
Okay.
In terms of the content we're doing, I think we're being as innovative as we can be within the circumstances we've got.
Right. Sure.
So that's what we're focusing on. We're focusing much more on the quality of our content.
So would you say that would be a general principle that if people have got good content that's marketed to the specific target audience, that people will always want to read it wherever they might find it?
I hope so.
Right.
And this is where the problem lies. You cannot get good content unless you're going to pay for it. I mean, to create good content, you've actually got to have people there who are being paid to create it.
Right.
Unfortunately, the way people make money online is by selling content. And sold content is not good quality content.
Okay.
So it's at the moment it's a very, very difficult situation between no one really knows what's going to happen. If magazines survive, then I think we'll be in good stead. We'll be in a good situation. But as I say, online the only money in content is purchase content.
So through some of my own research, I've done some from Australia and some recently. There seems to be a little bit of a trend. I don't know that it's here. Back to print in niche markets, like especially the women's market. And if you are into whatever it is, model aeroplanes or whatever the niche the publication is, then people kind of want to still have that physical magazine and take it away for the weekend. They're kind of like got their iPad and they want to leave it at home. So do you think, how does that relate to your publication?
Well, I mean, we work in niche markets, so I would hope so. I know certainly that people pick it up, the magazine. I know when we have a good issue, the magazine goes like that. So people are taking it.
Right.
But we've just got to wait and see what happens.
Okay, so where do you see the magazine going in the next 5 years or so? What sort of direction? Any major changes or?
Well, a lot of it depends on how things open up here. So, I mean, the last 3 to 4 years, the fact that Facebook has been allowed to proliferate naturally means that people are saying a lot more than they used to say.
Right. I noticed you had an article somewhere about Facebook and the culture it's created.
So in terms of where we're going, I think a lot of it depends on that trend continuing.
Right.
I would love to be able to write about all sorts of things we can't write about.
Okay.
But where that will happen, that's something I don't know. In terms of print versus digital, another problem with digital is it's very difficult to actually make a decent amount of advertising revenue online. If you want it, so basically, if you want to have good content, you've got to pay people for it.
Mm-hmm.
But if you and that means you need to have a big online revenue.
Right.
But it's very difficult to do.
So you have a website,
Yeah.
and you have the physical magazine, and then you can download the PDF version. So what's this? You got some statistics on what are the people visiting the website? What are they looking for, and how many download the PDF version?
The PDF version usually gets about 2,000 hits a month.
Okay, that's not. Wow.
So I mean, so that's between. And we've also got we've probably got a couple of hundred followers on Issue as well. So we have a digital version on the website Issue.
Right.
So it's I'd say probably about 2,000 people are actually seeing it in its magazine form each month. So what was the rest of the question? So
any statistics, like what are people coming to the website for, and is that different to what's in the magazine? Do you see them as two different communications?
We used to think that people were more interested in events than they were in features online. Mm-hmm. Because when you read a feature, people tend to, they only want to read between 300 and 600 words.
Right.
But what's happened is when you have a really good feature which is well marketed, you get thousands of hits.
Okay.
You get absolutely, seriously.
Uh-huh.
The most you'll ever get out of an event article which is fully pumped for 2 weeks is about 2,000 hits. Whereas, our cover story for our September issue has had like 6,000 hits. Which is a lot.
So that's about what we love about Vietnam.
Yeah, 101 things I love about Vietnam. Yeah, it's a lot.
Right.
So we normally expect a good article to get about 2,000.
Right. So why do you think that one was? What was behind that caused people to be interested?
People like lists.
They like
lists.
Lists. Okay, yeah. Sure. Uh-huh. But do you think there's something about that, the concept behind there? Like on one hand, many foreigners might be complaining Vietnam's difficult about this or difficult about that, but this one was a positive slant on.
I think that's part of it.
Here.
I think that's part of it. I also think the timing was quite important with what's going on in Syria and Iraq at the moment.
Right.
What's been happening in the Ukraine, with what's happened in Israel, Gaza, Palestine as well. With the amount of negative news, the Ebola thing, the Boko Haram as well, and people being negative about Vietnam in general. And I think it was just saying, why are we being negative all the time?
Right.
Look around us. Look at what's good about this place where we live.
Right.
And I think that's probably why as well.
Uh-huh. And how much input on that feature did you?
It's my idea.
It was your idea.
It's my idea.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you enjoyed putting that one together.
Yeah.
Right. Excellent. Yeah. All right. So if you think about the media space in Vietnam, so television and the general media, and it maybe further to marketing in general, what comments, evaluation or advice would you give either someone who's wanting to get involved in that space, or what would you say to leaders that are in that space now? The two different
I think on TV, I think they've got to stop having too many adverts in between programs at peak viewing time. I really think they've got, because what's happening is you're getting 7-8 minutes worth of adverts, and it really irritates the viewers.
Right.
So basically, they should be upping the price. They should be upping the price of the blocks you're booking on the advertisements, and decreasing the number of adverts.
So from your knowledge or experience, is that how different is that to say Sydney or London or New York?
I think they're going more down the American style, and it's wrong.
Okay.
In the UK, there's some very strict guidelines on adverts like that,
right.
And literally you're talking about 3-4 minutes max.
Right. Okay.
But I'm sitting there watching this program, and suddenly it goes into adverts, and all the Vietnamese around me are really angry about it. So I don't think that's good advertising.
Okay. Interesting. So Nick, you would remember back a few years ago when advertising on TV, especially, was maybe not the same as it is now.
Yeah.
It was a good opportunity to go to the bathroom or get the snack.
Yeah.
That's also true, I think, around the world.
Mm-hmm.
Why do you think Vietnam seems to place such a high premium on television ads? The agencies seem to push people to TV, or the clients want TV. Do you have any?
I think part of it's status.
Uh-huh.
I think if you can say that your product's on TV,
Right.
that's status symbol wise, it's quite big.
Mm.
I mean, it's amazing that some of the adverts you get on there. It's like, why is this on TV?
Uh-huh.
I mean, we all see them. I think also because there's a lack of sophistication in the market.
Mm-hmm.
So people believe that TV is a way forward, but they don't really think there's other ways of doing the advertising. They think that you have adverts on TV, that's your one-stop solution.
Right.
And when I say lack of sophistication, and except for the very large multinational companies, there are very few companies in Vietnam who understand that you're actually doing a full rounded campaign when you want to market yourself.
Uh-huh. Okay. Anything else you'd want to speak to in terms of people wanting to get into the space or to the leadership of media organisations?
I'd say make sure you're legal.
Right. Yeah.
It's often easier to not be legal in Vietnam than it is to be illegal.
Mm-hmm.
Following the rule of law can often be quite difficult here. My suggestion is just follow it.
Right.
Because if you're going to do something and if you're going to become successful,
right.
Make sure you've got everything properly set up so you can do it. Because if you start to become successful and you're not properly legal, then people attack you.
Mm. Does that also correlate to the idea of looking long term? That it's in most business areas in Vietnam, things seem to be short term. So for the word and in general, you think that is part of the issue?
Yep, certainly. I mean, people need to look more long term. Yeah. Yeah, I think that's part of it. I think also there's a tendency to come here and it's like almost Nhap Nhap Tui Tục is the word in Vietnamese.
Mm-hmm. How would you translate that?
If you're gonna get yourself into a family, you follow their rules and regulations or their traditions. And what happens is a lot of foreigners come in here, they see what Vietnam is like, and they think the way to do it is actually follow the way Vietnamese and Vietnamese people are. It's wrong.
Uh-huh.
Don't do that. Do it the way which works best.
Right.
Which is not necessarily the Vietnamese way, not necessarily the Australian or the American way. Just do it right.
Uh-huh.
You understand what I mean?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Sure. Yeah. So there's a difference between being an alternative voice and yet following the rules at the same time.
Yeah.
Just from my own experience, we had an American magazine, a men's magazine, that would have been known for being the alternate sort of view, not following the traditional line, and yet within that space, the way it's published, and we follow the lines, and so it's quite an interesting idea to have an alternative voice to the traditional voice, and yet still do the right thing.
That's it. Make sure you do the right thing first and foremost, and then you can.
Right.
Then you've got options to be more alternative. Because if you are legal, then it means you can. It's the same thing. Okay. If you've got capital, you can do things with capital.
Yeah.
If you don't have capital, you can't do anything.
Mm-hmm.
It's the same thing. It's the same concept.
Right. Good. Anything else you'd like to add? In thinking about media marketing in Vietnam, you've not been known to be short of an opinion on.
I would say that about 4 years ago, I got approached by a group of American students who were doing some research on media censorship in Vietnam, and I was never able to say what I thought properly to them. And now I'm going to say it to camera. In America, your country is far more regulated than Vietnam when it comes to media, okay? You're the one who is censored, not us. Yes, we've got problems, but not like you, okay?
That's interesting, yeah.
Fox.
Sure. Sure.
So-
It's a different type of regulation. You're saying
Yeah, it's different type of regulation. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So you said just before that content was king. So if you're communicating something across any media that people are interested in, is that the key?
Yes. It's more than that. Okay, it's content is king and the audience is king.
Mm-hmm.
So basically, if you've got the content, it's one thing, but that's the first part of it. But then you've got to get it to the audience,
Okay.
and you've got to get it to the audience in a way where they will actually want to read the content.
Right.
So it's all about sound bites these days.
Okay.
So there's two
but
parts
the
of it.
channel. Do you have any challenges yourself in the channel to the market? So you've got content, but how do you get it?
It's taken
to
us a long time to work out how to use Facebook and Twitter properly.
Okay, so social media plays a part these days.
I think I think we've learned how to do it now.
Mm.
We're not necessarily always doing it right, but we've
Right.
learned how to do it.
Okay.
So that's certainly something which we feel we've got over, and certainly when we get our Facebook posts and our tweets correct, we get a lot of interest in what we're doing.
Right. Do people give a lot of feedback? Like, I don't know, do they send in emails? Do they write on your Facebook wall, reply to tweets, letters to the editor? Do you get much feedback from readers besides you've
We
just done a survey?
get a fair amount actually, much more now than we used to.
Hmm.
The problem is when people say things to your face. You don't ever really know if they're being honest with you or not.
Okay.
If they're close friends, then yes, you know they're being.
Mm.
But certainly now, because of Facebook, we're getting, and Twitter, we're getting a lot more feedback, and we're getting negative feedback, which is what we want to.
Mm-hmm.
Because you want to hear when you do something which someone's uncomfortable with.
Okay. Good. Do you pay any attention to the research companies out there, or do they measure your publication? I mean, they're measuring the Vietnamese market. Do they measure?
we do a readership survey. So we do a readership survey every year.
Not your own research. I
Yeah.
mean the research companies, TNS and Nielsen and the other.
In terms of what they're doing in the market here.
Yeah. Do you get any statistics off them? They don't measure
yes,
your market.
we do. I mean, we used to do quite a lot with Simigo.
Right.
Probably less at the moment, but certainly we do get some stuff off them. I'm also looking at maybe doing something with another company as well right now.
Right. Okay. Great.
So
So where do you? What else do you do? So Nick, the word Vietnam. What else?
I also do some business skills training from time to time.
Okay.
So that's very much when the work comes, I do it. Family, do a fair amount of cycling, reading. Love reading books.
Right.
And traveling.
What type of books do you read?
I'm generally into thrillers of different sorts.
Okay. Interesting.
I've probably gone through every. What's his name again? Very famous. The Pelican Brief. American author. The Pelican Brief. The Bleachers. Sycamore Row. The Racketeers. What's his name again?
I know those titles, but I'm not a thriller reader.
It's
so.
not Stephen King. What's his name? But anyway,
Anyway,
he's a former lawyer. I think I've
Right,
pretty much read
sure.
it. I think I've pretty much read every single novel of his in the last 3
Uh-huh.
months. I can't believe his name escapes me. And that's what I do is I get into something which I find I like, and I read every single novel very
Uh-huh.
quickly.
Great. So you've been here a few years now. What are the things that you like and dislike about living here and working with the word Vietnam and doing what you do?
What I dislike is exactly what I have to learn to like.
Mm-hmm.
My problem is tolerance,
Okay.
and I'm trying to teach myself to be much more tolerant of things which back home you wouldn't be tolerant of.
Okay. So what do you like then? You just wrote an article about what's to like about Vietnam. What do you enjoy about being an expat in Ho Chi Minh City and working in media?
Working in media, I enjoy the creativity because we have to be very creative, obviously.
Right.
In terms of being expat, lifestyle. I think the fact that it's getting worse here. It's not the same as it used to be, but certainly back in London, there's a lot of self-importance among people, which you get less of here. I like that.
Okay.
I like the fact that it's fairly easy to get talking to people here. It's
Right.
you can meet people quite easily, whereas in London it's very hard.
Okay.
I like the fact that we're living somewhere which is deemed to be exotic,
Right.
and that we can travel quite easily, and that and it's like people back home saying, "Oh, have you been to Angkor Wat?" I said, "Well, yeah." "Oh, really? Well, I've been there 3 times." You understand what I mean? It's that kind of funny stuff. You know what I mean?
I've been to Halong Bay about 20 times.
Exactly.
but,
Yeah. It's that kind of weird stuff. I love eating on the street. I love the street life here. That still gives me a buzz.
Sure. Yeah, for me too. That whole it's so much energy
Completely, yeah.
compared to people sort of go home and shut the door back in Sydney and watch the TV and then do it all again the next day. But here, there's life and energy. And
exactly,
stuff.
yeah. And that's it. And I love the fact with that life and energy that people eat out a lot.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah, sure.
I love that. People, as you say, people don't go home and shut the doors.
Yeah.
I mean, tonight me and my wife are not going out because we made a decision not to go out.
But
otherwise, we're going to be out 5 times this week. Cool. And that's normal here.
Yeah. Right. Excellent. Well, thank you, Nick.
Okay.
My name's Bruce Flanagan, and I'm the host of The Buzz in Marketing and Media. And that's it for today's show. Thanks very much for being with us.